Welcome to the Scott Home Podcast back here on a Wednesday night talking Big 12 basketball is finally in full swing for both men's and women's basketball. And, today, January 10th, some big SEC news dropped. And, guys, I think we're going to talk about the biggest SEC news of the day, and that's Mekhi Muse, two-time national championship at the University of Georgia, joined the Houston Cougar football program along with a general transfer roundup for that program. Meaty episode, even though we're only talking about three sports. So I will end the preamble here. Dustin, my good friend and longtime co-host, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, bud. Enjoying 2024 off to a good start. Can't complain about much thus far. Excited to be watching some Big 12 basketball at long last. Excited about you, Sam, being all professional with your button-up shirt while Bobby and I are being slobs with our red hoodies here, making us look bad for the people on the YouTube feed.
Literally got home from work 15 minutes ago. This is not me dressing up, but this is if you've ever wondered, and frankly, unless you're like my mom, I'm questioning why you'd wonder this. But if you wonder what I wear to work, yes, it's generic mid-30s white guy button up. That's me. It's me. Hi, Bobby. Let's get us back on track here. How are you doing? How you feeling about the last week of Cougar stuff? Just what's going on, friend?
Hey man, we're good. I had to got home from beautiful Tyler, Texas yesterday or earlier today. So that's why I'm dressed like a slob. Is I got home and was like, yeah, I got about 4 hours of sleep in my hotel room last night. I could not fall asleep. So I was which is ironic considering I work for a sleep company. So came home, used all my beautiful, wonderful, soft, cozy things, took a nap, and am ready to talk some Cougar sports.
CC Alanis Morissette on that irony there. But of course, got to do our little housekeeping at the top here. Got to mention our Patreon, patreon.com/SH podcast. I would say still fairly fresh premium episodes that I did along with Bobby and myself. I did kind of a preview of the Big 12 men's basketball season, which is still fairly fresh. I would say most of that information has not been outdated yet, so you haven't checked that out already, as well as premium content that Dustin and I have been doing. Dustin has a really awesome by position Google Doc roster tracker for the comings and goings of the offseason. I have a transfer specific tracker as well for the outgoings and incomings as well. If any of that sounds good to you, if the thought of supporting us financially and what we do here as a weekly independent Houston Cougar sports podcast appeals to you, please go to patreon.com/SHPAWcast for as little as 16 cents a day. You could support the work that the three of us do here on a weekly basis. And of course, going to mention our friends at Charlie Hustle. At long last, guys, we are here on the 10th on the doorstep of a Charlie Hustle Houston Cougar release. We have seen the new tees, looks fantastic. Really excited for you guys to, in only a matter of days here, experience what our partners there have done in terms of new Cougar collection to add on to as a fantastic, very comfortable, incredible vintage U of H collection as well. So that's charliehustle.com. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, that you can look good, you can support our show, you can really just check all the boxes, and just by listening to the sound of my voice here, save 15% off your order by using our promo code SHP15. That's Scott and Holland Podcast 15 SHP15 at charliehustle.com. Supporting a great company that really cares about putting good Houston Cougar products out there and support our show. In the process, really just like I said a moment ago, checking all the boxes there. Guys, we got to lead by talking about Houston Cougar men's basketball. It is now 2 games into its inaugural Big 12 conference play. I am not the biggest Fran Fraschilla fan, but that was just one of those. And I don't dislike him. I'm Fran Fraschilla neutral. Like I feel like he gets hype just because he's on the Big 12 games. He's fine, but it didn't escape me that hey, this guy's calling our games now. We're the big Tuesday night game on ESPN. Like we've had a small number next to our name for a number of years now. That aspect of Houston Cougar men's basketball's current station isn't novel to me, but the fact that we're playing this big game at Iowa State on a Tuesday night, that's really cool stuff. We're going to lead off with West Virginia, which was a very satisfying game in its own right, and talk about that. But I think that was just kind of my general first big picture thought. I was just like, wow, that's us now. We're the team. We're not just a premier basketball program. We are a premier basketball program playing this premier conference on this premier stage. Just everything around Houston Cougar men's basketball now reflecting, I think, the excellence that we've all gotten to witness here the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've been talking about in regards to the conference move and how excited we're about it, right? Is that it's you're part of these games that matter. It's not just, you get a couple games in the non-conference where people pay attention and then they go, okay, let us know when you're playing Memphis, I guess. And other than that, we're just going to kind of like wait for the NCAA tournament to determine if we think, Houston is actually good this year or not. That's you get to test it night in and night out. I don't know who said it first. I think it may have been John Rossi or somebody, but just saying that, hey, every game in the Big 12 this year is going to feel like an NCAA tournament game. There's genuinely 11 of these 14 teams right now that I think have legitimate NCAA tournament aspirations. So like that's who you're playing. That's who you're playing most games, right? When you're going on the road, you're playing in an environment that is just rabid and that's going to be crazy because you have a small number next to your name. So, like I said, before you even talk about the game specifically, just the experience of having this past week, both of these games being Houston's intro to the Big 12 was just really exciting, and just it's everything that we want this program to be doing. It's this program finally playing on the stage that we know that it deserves.
Yeah, it's just really cool to be among those. I think I said it earlier in the season when I was excited that we were playing in one of those ESPN quirky little ACC Big 10 challenge type deals. We're like, oh wait, we get to do one of those. We get to be a part of the Big 12 Big East challenge. Like, awesome. How exciting is that? So I think we're going to see a bunch of cool stuff like that as we continue on in the season. We're going to get to play at Kansas. We get to do that, and that's going to be a massive game. Like all that kind of stuff. It's new, and it's not exciting because it's new. It's exciting because it's awesome and it's new.
Yeah, so Houston did open Big 12 play with that home date against West Virginia. A rousing success as Houston jumped out to a big early lead. Never looked back en route to an 89-55 win. And it's funny because we all three of us, I think we're kind of in agreement that like, oh man, like the 23 point projected spread by Ken Palm, the 21.5, whatever it was that Vegas had. It just feels high. It just feels high, right? Because this West Virginia team has looked so much better since getting a bunch of guys eligible. And then we ended up with a game where Houston won by 34, and if anything, that 34-point deficit flattered the Mountaineers because that was just kind of, I think, the result. A lot of it kind of becoming an ugly foul fest in the second half, and West Virginia kind of getting a lot of trips to the free throw line to take what would have been a truly disastrous offensive performance by them and turning it into like merely a bad one. So, I think maybe the thing that jumps out to me was the job that Houston did defending Raekwon Battle specifically. A guy who scored, 29, 29, 24 in his first three games, getting healthy and eligible, was 1 of 9 from the floor for 4 points, with his one made field goal coming like in the closing few minutes of the game that was already well out of hand. So, I think just huge kudos to Emmanuel Sharp and Damian Dunn, who both spent a lot of time on him in this one. I thought both played really solid games overall. Sharp 8.7 boards, 3 steals. Dunn 14 points to pitch in as well. But I think, as much as anything, just the defense that they played on Battle was really impressive and was really indicative of the overall, just strong game that Houston had on both ends of the court, really.
Yeah, tough to hate when you win by 34. There's really not a ton you can break down, especially when you hold their best player, a guy who was in Raekwon Battle, like you said, who was coming into the game with some pretty nice looking statistics in the games that he's been healthy, and to kind of bring him in here and to just shut him down, frankly, is just one of super exciting to see. And that when you face a team that has a guy like that, you're Kelvin Sampson. You have zero concern that Kelvin Sampson's going to be able to game plan about how to stop him. Getting him into some early foul trouble, I believe, if I am recalling correctly,
Yep.
was a huge benefit, obviously. And when you have a player of his ability, if you can attack him and get him into foul trouble, that's defense by offense, right? You get to go down, really challenge him, get him into a little bit of trouble, and then he can't affect you on the offensive side. So that was really nice. And then the job we did on Quinn Zielinski was also pretty nice. It's not that he has a ton of size, right? He's 6'9", 230. We match up with that, but he has some athleticism, and he was averaging so far in the season. He's at 14.5 points a game. We held him to 8. That being said, he did score 7 the next game versus K-State. So something to kind of watch going forward, but you held him to 8 points, and that's pretty exciting as well. So what about you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think full transparency going into this one, I didn't think U of H would have as much of a problem dealing with West Virginia's other high usage offensive guys, whether that's Lazinski, Kirk Risa, and Noah Farrakhan. But Battle did give me some pause before the game, and especially after that really impressive game he had against Ohio State, 24 points and 10 boards and 3 steals. I didn't think that Battle would dominate U of H, but it wouldn't have shocked me at all if Battle ended up scoring at least 15, 16 points in a game where U of H still won by a decent margin. If anything, I think Battle had the worst game out of the 4 guys that I've mentioned here. I mean, I could think of at least, if I went back through the game kind of minute by minute, at least 1 or 2 positive plays that the 3 other guys that I mentioned, Farrakhan, Krisha, and Slazinski, even a Cook who drained a nice looking 3 in the first half, that those guys made before the very closing stages of the game. All I can remember about Raekwon Battle's afternoon in Houston is that big dunk inside of 3 minutes left in the game, and what was absolutely a laugher. Like, they're just really, he just was not able to impact the game even occasionally. Like you said, Dustin, incredible job by Sharp and Dunn taking the lion's share of the defensive assignment from Battle. I think for the game itself more broadly, you saw really early on, maybe the Cougs settled for some not great shots, maybe in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, but like that they got Francis and Roberts involved against an opponent that didn't really have the deepest front court. And I think those guys kind of got the offense going. Dustin, you were one of the 3 of us that was actually there at the Fertitta Center. It felt like from watching this one on TV that the crowd had different energy right after that play where Battle tried to go straight at Sharp. Sharp took the ball, drew the foul from Battle, and he went to the media time. It felt like a different energy in the building after that one. It felt like that was the start of the Cougs really just pulling away and leaving no doubt that even at halftime that Houston was going to win the game. There was going to be no surprise West Virginia making this closer than expected performance here. And I thought we saw LJ Cryer be hugely important in this one to the Cougs pulling away in the first half, not just doing his usual shot making stuff, but I thought he was just as active defensively as a lot of his teammates. And that was really the only question mark around Cryer when he came into this program, was that he came here as a proven high level scorer from his time at Baylor. But I think the question you asked was, could he defend at the level that Kelvin Sampson requires from his league guards? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. And I think that's really exciting. Even fast forwarding, maybe he didn't have the best game after. So I thought LJ Cryer was a big part, along with all the guys we've mentioned previously of the Cougars, pulling away in this one and not giving us any kind of stress that the Cougars were going to take a bad loss to open Big 12 play.
Yeah, I think Jamal Shedd, he had that play. He had really kind of a number of plays early on that I thought really kind of swung the momentum in Houston's favor and really got the crowd, up and on its feet. And I think this crowd, with, not having really gotten many marquee opponents in non-conference, it's kind of like some maybe like slightly, I want to try to come up with a word that's not like too insulting, but the word that came to mind was
do it,
sleepy.
insult them. Yeah.
The word that came to mind was sleepy. That feels maybe a little harsh, but there's just been a lot of games where, all of a sudden there would be some big moment, late in the first half or something, and all of a sudden the crowd kind of gets up and you go, oh, right, there's actually like some people here that can make some noise, because it's just, there aren't as many like, oh crap, everyone gets on their feet and goes crazy moments when you're, beating Penn by 35 or whatever. So just, I thought it was really cool, just real early on in this one that it took, because that was something I was worried about, is, these are the games that you want your crowd to be going bonkers right from the start, to kind of, against one, not to get into the next game, but like we saw Iowa State's crowd do for them at the beginning of the game. You want your crowd to do that for you. You want your crowd to kind of get you some early points, to kind of spark that early run for you. And we saw that with very quickly at the gates that Houston's crowd was appreciated that this was a Big 12 game, got into it. And yeah, Jamal Shedd, I mean, it's easy to, he's someone who it's easy to kind of, get loud in the crowd when he is out there, because he just makes so many just like emphatic plays, just big plays throughout the game. I was really impressed by him in this one too. 8 points, 11 assists to just 1 turnover and 4 blocks. When's the last time you saw 4 blocks from like a 6'1" point guard? And it's been some other games this year too, where he's had, some key blocks that have really shifted momentum. And it's rare to see a point guard. And not only that, not like an oversized point guard, but just a genuinely, if anything, slightly, smaller, on the smaller side point guard, who has just such good timing, such good quickness, such good defensive instincts, is so just like right up in your face defensively. That like that he's a threat to block shots. And we saw him impacting the game in a number of ways, as he always does. And just had a couple of those key moments where he just, I think, got everyone going and kind of sparked Houston to to get out to their big lead in the first half that they really carried through the rest of the game. So then, yeah, unfortunately, things weren't quite as easy in Houston's second Big 12 game as they went to Ames to face Iowa State. And Houston went down 14-0 to start this game. They were able to trim that to within 4 in the first half, but the Cyclones extended it back to 10 at halftime. The Cougars at one point briefly took a 1-point lead in the second half, but for the most part spent the second half catching all or most of the way up. Then ISU would make a couple shots. Houston would catch most or all the way up. Cyclones would make another couple shots. And then the game ends up tied 53 all with the Cyclones inbounding on their own side of the court with under 40 seconds to go when Milan Momcilovic, the guy that we spent so much time focusing on in our game preview, hits that Nowitzki-like fadeaway over Jamal Shed and the onrushing Juwan Roberts on the baseline. Houston's ensuing off-balance three-pointer for LJ Cryer misses. Momcilovic hits a couple free throws, and just like that, the game is over. And, I was real interested. I went back today and as much as I didn't want to, re-looked at that Momcilovic fadeaway because he had Shed on him initially. And, I kind of was like, I didn't remember exactly what led to that shot. And I was like, it must have been like a defensive switch that Shed got switched onto him. It wasn't. It was like out of bounds. Shed was on him. And I thought that was really interesting. One of the things that we talked about in the preview was that, he's usually kind of the small ball four for Iowa State, but they came out with two bigs and then Momcilovic. So Houston had, Francis and Roberts on their two bigs. And then their three guards out there was, their usual kind of three starters, Shed, Cryer, and Emmanuel Smart, which doesn't really give you someone necessarily. I think you'd probably rather have Smart, if anybody, on him just because he's got a little bit more size than Jamal. But that doesn't really give you, a guy with the size to match up with Momcilovic in that situation. And that was not to break my arm, patting myself on the back too hard, but that is a situation where I feel like if Terrence Arsenault was healthy, Terrence Arsenault was out there on that possession because you've got the timeout left.
Yep.
So you make or miss the shot, you call a timeout and probably put, Cryer or whoever back out there for him once you have the ball offensively. But that's a defensive possession coming out of a timeout where Arsenault's out there. And if Arsenault's out there, he probably ends up on Momcilovic. And, maybe Momcilovic hits that crazy turnaround fadeaway anyway. But I think that's a lot tougher with, someone with another 6 or so inches of height on Jamal Shed like Terrence Arsenault has. So that was kind of a little bit poignant for me that oh man, as it was happening too, I remember thinking oh man, that's would have loved to have Terrence out there on him for that shot. But I think you got to give Iowa State a ton of credit. Man, you got to give Emmanuel Sharp a ton of credit. Just hitting shots in this one when nobody else was for Houston. Ended up with 20 of Houston's 53 points. But yeah, man, this is life in the Big 12, where, like I said, every game feels like it's the NCAA tournament game. This is what we wanted, and these are the games that help you out more than beating East Carolina helps you out, right? Would you have loved to have learned the lesson of what it's like to get punched in the mouth by a Big 12 team right out of the gate, that 14-0, and then also get away with the win? Yeah, would have loved that. Would have loved to also not be -10 in free throw attempts in a game where it felt like both teams were playing equally physical brands of defense, but that's life in the Big 12, man. Wait till we play at Kansas if you thought if you didn't like the way that the fouls were called in this one. Wait till we get to Allen Fieldhouse. But yeah, so I mean, I guess my last thought before, as I'm kind of hogging the mic here, was just that this is life in the Big 12, and I was impressed by the Houston fan base after this one. That the overall reaction was hey, that was awesome. I wish we would have won, but that was awesome. Those are the games you want to play. I don't feel like I really saw anyone, at least in our mentions on social media afterwards, no, man, we lost to an unranked team or blah, blah, blah. I thought it was people were hey, yeah, this is great. We want to be in the Big 12. This is what Big 12 basketball is. Game on. That's one game out of 18. So let's go. So yeah, I don't know. It's about as happy as I think you can be after a regular season loss, I guess.
Yeah, I think when you looked at the next few weeks schedule when this team was 14-0 after the West Virginia game, I think this one was a pretty good candidate for that first loss when you looked ahead these next few weeks. And I'm not going to say I expected U of H to not score a single point in the first 6 minutes of this game and to be in a 14-0 hole before Emmanuel Sharp, I think appropriately enough, given how he played, finally made a 3 to get the Cougars on the board. But a lot of this game went generally how I expected. It was close down the stretch, low scoring. Both teams forced double-digit turnovers. Neither team shot super well from deep, which I think is more of an endorsement of both teams' defensive acumen than any kind of indictment of their 3-point shooting necessarily. And like you, Dusty, yeah, I think I've been pleasantly surprised at how circumspect the Cougar fan base has been about the result. You never feel great after a loss, but I think there are absolutely some things to be encouraged by here if you're a Cougar fan. Hilton is a hard place to play at. Kansas, a team that rightfully earned a 1 seed last year, lost by, what was it, 15 at Hilton last year, Dustin, to a worse, I think it's fair to say, Iowa State team than the one that we just saw. And I think you can't say enough about what Emmanuel Sharp did in this one. We already hold him in a high regard, but I'll fully admit he's been way better than what I expected coming into the season. And I still had pretty good expectations, but I think coming into the season, we kind of knew 4 of the 5 starters: Shed, Cryer, Roberts, and Francis. I think that's fair to say. And that final spot was this toss-up between Sharp, Damian Dunn, maybe Terrence Arsenault. And since the start of December, Sharp has grabbed that starting spot and not let go. I mean, the offensive stuff is good. Going 5-10 from deep against this Iowa State team, really impressive. I would argue that's the best offensive performance that Momcilovic's awesome make aside. I would say best full game performance from anyone on either team. But I think what's really stood out for me is his willingness, and I think most importantly, his effectiveness doing the work that Sampson requires of his guards on the defensive end. That's the area I think where he's ahead of maybe what our preseason expectations were for the guy. And really, no way this game is as close as it is down the stretch without the work that Sharp does in this game. And I think while I'm on the positives, the Cougs also probably aren't in this game if they don't crash the glass and get the amount of offensive boards we saw them get last night. This team finished with 11 offensive rebounds and grabbed just over 34% of their misses. And those won't be close to the best numbers that this U of H team puts up this year. But I think considering it was against an opponent that is really good at keeping opponents off the glass, one of the best in the country, I think it was 10% more than what Iowa State allows on average. Wani Roberts, special distinction in that category. I mean, there's plenty of red meat to criticize from this loss. I mean, you didn't get enough consistently on the offensive end from guys not named Emmanuel Sharp, though I think Jamal Shed was obviously clutch down the stretch. I mean, your assist to turnover ratio is 8-16. It's kind of stunning with that stat that this game was as close as it was down the stretch. But yeah, I have the negatives. I have plenty of them. Don't worry. I will not spare the negatives when talking about this game. But I think my overall thought is that I think the Cougs went out there and competed. That's what I wanted them to do, was compete. Like, I didn't want to come here and talk about like, oh, we lost by 20. Like, are we really that good of a defensive team? Because Iowa State certainly made. I mean, I think I knew our defense was better than our offense. I'm not thrilled with how we started the game, but this really hasn't changed my overall outlook on this team 24 hours-ish later.
Yeah, I would say it hasn't changed my overall thoughts on the team, and I'm not jumping off a bandwagon or anything like that. I didn't necessarily expect us, I was, like we said, I was going to be happy if we came away with a 1-point win in at Iowa State. But as Sam and I were kind of talking after the game last night, we were just kind of talking, is I don't like how we lost. I'm okay losing, but I don't like the fact that you start the game, the first 9 minutes of the game, and you don't get your second bucket until you're 9 minutes in. We've had multiple games this year against our better teams where we come out and we just start too slow. I mean, 6 minutes without a bucket, it doesn't matter if you're playing Iowa State. It doesn't matter. If you're playing in the Big 12, there's a good chance you're going to lose that game. And normally when we go 6-7 minutes without scoring, right, it has happened before, right, where we will go extended periods. Our defense comes in and they do a great job of shutting the other team down. And I'm not saying that they didn't yesterday when they started slow. But again, it wasn't, I can take missing shots, right? You miss a shot, it happens. You turn the ball over 5 times and you don't even have 2 buckets in that time. It's got to be a little concerning. Maybe it doesn't go, oh, this team is going to finish in the bottom half of the Big 12, but it now makes you kind of want to at least go, if we don't fix this, we're going to be in a lot of trouble going forward. If we can't figure out how to stop these slow starts, because we've done it against just about every good team we've played this year. Utah, we started fairly slow. Not super slow, but I mean, we had 4 points. What was it? I had it pulled up here. I had it written down.
Was it 12? Weren't we down 12 before by like the first media timeout or something like that?
Yeah,
I think
before at 15:23, Utah got 12 and we had 4. That's not great, right? We've been out talenting everybody so far this year. It doesn't look like in the Big 12 we're just going to be able to out talent everybody. You're just not going to. I am super excited by how this team was down 14 and came back and fought back. That second half was really nice. Jamal Shed, some of the best defensive, one of the best defensive performances I've seen in a while. Just how he was able to, I mean, he got blocks on big guys, right? And sometimes at the end of the game, if that guy's gonna turn around, hit that Nowitzki fader, tip your hat. He's on scholarship too. He's also a D1 athlete. I can take losing like that. I'm cool with losing if a guy makes a play, you'd miss a couple of shots. It doesn't happen. 5 turnovers. We got outscored points off turnovers by 11 points. Doesn't matter who in the Big 12 you're playing, you're going to lose. It's going to be a lot closer than you hope it is versus some of the bottom teams in this league. If you get outscored on turnovers against ECU, to your point, I get it. You're probably going to win that game. But you can't do that in the Big 12. You can't have these turnovers. And I know Iowa State is an incredible defensive team. I didn't expect us to go out and score 80, right? I didn't expect us to go out and put up 75. I do like to see us a little bit better than 2 buckets in 9 minutes.
Yeah, 16 turnovers for the game is too many for sure. And I mean, Kelvin Sampson said after the game something about like, in regards to the turnovers, like, yeah, we kind of peed down our leg a little bit, which is a little bit harsh, but a little bit fair probably.
And I don't think I'm pointing anything out that the coaching staff doesn't know or that the coaching staff's not going to address.
For sure.
But like, it's got to be worrying to somebody.
Yeah, no, I think offensively, there's kind of like the 3 things is like, are you making shots? Are you grabbing rebounds when you don't make shots? And are you not turning the ball over? And, you know, if Houston does like 2 of those things pretty well, they did 1 of those things pretty well. And the other 2, they did, you know, everyone other than Emmanuel Sharp did pretty poorly at one of them. And just kind of everybody did poorly at the other one. And I mean, I think it was one of those things where it was a lot of credit to Iowa State. You know, Iowa State's a good team. They're going to force turnovers. You're not going to play Iowa State and commit 3 turnovers or commit 5 turnovers, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. But, you know, you saw, and I think I texted you this exact thing during the game, Bobby. It's like, oh, like Iowa State's doing to us what we're doing to other teams.
Yeah.
That they're turning us over. They're getting in our head where now we are just kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because we're just a little bit, we're peeing down our leg, you know.
The backcourt violation.
Exactly.
It's a perfect example.
Just do dumb stuff that they don't normally do, that you just can't do if you're gonna win that game. So I mean, yeah, defensively, you know, yeah, I would have loved, like I said, the game to proceed in a way where Iowa State didn't go to the line as much, but you know that's going to happen. Ultimately, you held a good team, a good offensive team under 1 point per possession in their own building. Like that, you'll take that defensive performance. I think. What you can't take is, the 6 minutes right out the gate where you don't score any points. The overall just kind of poor shooting night, and the overall just, you know, really not taking effective care of the basketball. So we saw this team, you know, Coach Sampson talking, you know, in between you know, the end of non-conference in the West Virginia game, saying, hey, we're just spending, you know, as much time as we ever have, like practicing offense, because we need to practice this team getting, you know, the defense is there. Like, holy cow, this team has been playing some insane defense this year, but it's those offensive stretches. And when you play a lot of the teams in non-conference, even some of the better teams, even some of the, you know, Utah's a good team. Utah's probably a tournament team. Dayton's a good team. Dayton's probably a tournament team. Houston is a good enough team that they can have a couple of offensive stretches where they go real cold and beat those teams, as we saw. You know, Iowa State is a little bit too good of a team and a little bit too good of an atmosphere to have that kind of stretch. You know, don't go down 14-0, and then if you outplay them for the last 35 minutes, you win, right? So that's the lesson that you think Houston is going to take away from this. And you know, I think certainly this offense continues to be a work in progress. I think we all hope and expect that by the end of the season, it's going to be in a better place than it is now. But, you know, in terms of things that you learn to take away from this game, it's realizing the importance of coming out of the gate strong, because these are teams good enough that if you spot them a 14-point advantage to start the game, you can play pretty well the rest of the way, which I think for the most part, you know, Houston didn't play perfect, but they played pretty well the rest of the way. But if you start them a 14-0 lead, that it might not matter.
Yeah, I think another thing I was concerned about from this one that ended up bearing itself on the game was Iowa State's ability to get to the free throw line, where they were +10 on points and +10 on attempts against the Cougars. Came in top 25 in the country, the Cyclones did, it gained to the free throw line and proceeded to, I think, not only do that, but shoot way above their season average on those freebies. I mean, Cyclones miss a few more of those if they shoot close to their season average. You know, this was a close enough game that maybe we're talking about a different result here. And you're going to definitely need more contribution from LJ Cryer, from the front court, from bench guys like Damian Dunn. I want to say, Damian Dunn, outstanding game against West Virginia. I was really excited about that Damian Dunn. We didn't see much of Damian Dunn. I mean, Damian Dunn played. I can see Damian Dunn's name in the box score for this one, but I couldn't tell you much of what Damian Dunn did in this game. That was positive.
I was gonna say he committed a pretty horrendous flagrant foul in this game, is what he did.
Yeah, that's why I did the positive qualifier, because I remembered that one. You need more positive from those guys. You don't need Damian Dunn to go out there and have 25 and 10, but I don't know, man. Maybe 8 points on decent shooting, a couple steals, and a couple of key fouls drawn on opposing players. That's the kind of stuff you need, because you can't count on Emmanuel Sharp to do what he did last night every single road game, because you can't count on anyone to shoot 50% from three every time they go to an opposing Big 12 arena. That's just not something that even really, really good players can consistently do. And again, as much as aspects of this game are frustrating, I don't think any of us are leaving this game with really that much different of opinion of who this Cougar team is. I think we have different things we're concerned about, but yeah, I think we'd all be more concerned if the 14-0 start ended up being reflective of how the remaining 30-something minutes of the game went, where you didn't maybe compete with Iowa State. And, maybe you come back and you're like, well, are those sparkling defensive metrics a product of this team being really good defensively, or the not so great teams that you played at times in non-conference schedule? And that's emphatically not what happened. Iowa State scored 43 points after that dominant first 10 minutes of this game. They needed some high-level shot making. We talked about to close this one out. I mean, the losses all count the same ultimately, but I think, to me at least, how the Cougs compete in this one was important, and I think indicative of a team that will still be in the upper part of the Big 12 standings when it's all said and done this year.
Yeah, I'm not ringing any like alarm bells going that this team is this terrible basketball team, and Sampson doesn't know what he's doing and all this stuff. It's just, at some point you got to kind of look at it and go, that's really bad. This is a problem, and it's going to continue to be a problem, and I'd like to see it fixed.
Believe me, Kelvin Sampson isn't mincing words, I'm sure, today about that.
Yeah. And Sam said it, he will be much more concerned if we come out and start slow against TCU this week, not to jump ahead of ourselves. That's when he'll kind of hit the button that I'm hitting now. So I definitely think it's something to just kind of look at and just pay attention to. I'm okay. And I don't know why, but it feels different when you start the game 14-0 rather than going a stretch of 6 minutes between the 10th and the 4th minute in the middle of the first half. It just feels different to start no points with 14 minutes left to go in the half. That just feels different. And I know feel isn't quantifiable, but it sucks. All right. It really sucks to just keep seeing 0 next to your name for that long. You're just like, just one, get a foul, something, give me one.
Real quick. So because I live on the western side of the country, the game started at 4 for me, and I can be off sometimes in time for that, but as a working adult, it's sometimes hard to get everything fully aligned so I could be sitting on my couch watching a Cougar basketball game at 4 p.m. my time. And I wasn't able to do that last night, so I ended up watching it at a later time last night. I did do one check around, I think it was while I was sitting in an especially interminably long light at, I want to say it was around 4:15 my time, and I popped it open, and it was when we were down 14-0. I was just like, ooh, I did the little app swipe. I'm like, not checking that again. I hope I checked it. I hope I watch this later tonight and I don't get 15 minutes in and be like, why didn't my friends just tell me to spare yourself the pain and watch this? And then eventually we got back in it. I was like, okay. I see why no one warned me against watching the full amount of this basketball game.
I just want to make another little side note about TV in the TV times. Why were we the 6 o'clock game when there was an East Coast game that tipped off at 9 o'clock East Coast time? Flip them. We're in the Central. So's Iowa State. It made no, they were like, watch Duke versus Kentucky or whoever was playing. And I was like, wait a minute. Also, final thing, you guys know what I'm about to say, but we have to start a petition or something that we do not play any Iowa teams before an Iowa caucus. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care. I don't want to see them. It's beautiful that I don't live in a swing state, so I never see political ads. Sam, I know you do all the time because you live in a swing state, but my God, I didn't want to see them. And I was like, this is so weird. And I text Dustin. I was like, wait a minute. I figured it out. It's an Iowa game. The caucuses are next week. And Dustin goes, yep, you nailed it. You nailed it. I totally forgot about that.
I was wondering the same thing. I was like, why is every other commercial break either a Ron DeSantis attack ad on Nikki Haley or a Nikki Haley attack ad on Ron DeSantis? They're just trading commercial breaks back and forth. And I was like, what's happening? But as soon as you go, the caucus is like next week, it goes, oh.
Right.
Yeah, let's play Iowa State after the caucuses in the
Like, I'm just saying,
presidential election cycles. Please, and
yeah, make them play each other. Make them play New Hampshire because that's like the second one. Make them play South Carolina. I don't care. Make them play each other.
I think didn't they actually play New Hampshire in non-con, Dustin? Like one of their last non-con games.
Like,
oh man,
like y'all
commercial
figure this
breaks.
out.
R.I.P.
Imagine
this can't be okay. So, anyways, not to take it on the political realm, but I was just like, oh my god, I suddenly miss. Where's the emu? Where's the emu?
Show me a Fansville commercial for the 50,000th time. Like
even that would be preferable.
Anything else? All right, steering this one back to the on the court stuff. Cougars proceeding to Fort Worth on Saturday to take on TCU, the Horned Frogs, in year 8 under Jamie Dixon, who took over a just shockingly historically unsuccessful program, which is why he was given a year 6 back in the 2021-22 season, despite having managed just one NCAA tournament bid and a first-round exit in his first 5 years. But that patience has paid off because TCU has made back-to-back NCAA tournaments the last 2 seasons and has won a game in both tournaments for their first NCAA tournament wins since 1987 was the last time they won one, before the last 2 years. I think remarkable. This team has been to 3 tournaments now under Jamie Dixon, has won 2 NCAA tournament games under Jamie Dixon, just unequivocally their kind of greatest period of modern success. Has not finished above 500 in the Big 12 under Jamie Dixon. Like that is what kind of conference we are in right now. The Horned Frogs they're actually hosting in about 13 minutes from now, believe they're hosting number 9 Oklahoma. But as of this very instant, 6:47 p.m. Central Time on January 10th, they are 11-3 overall. All 11 of those wins have come against teams ranked in the triple digits by Ken Palm. All 3 losses coming to teams ranked in the top 40 in Clemson, Nevada, Reno, and Kansas. So certainly a team that's going to very much live and die by what happens in Big 12 play. And man, a team that is going to be awfully annoyed coming into, I'm sure, at least tonight's game after their Big 12 opener at Kansas. Looks like they had a real good chance to potentially win that one. Had what certainly looked like it should have been a common foul, ruled a flagrant foul in the final minute of the game. Had what at least looked to me like it was traveling by Hunter Dickinson on the winning basket, not called, but as alluded to earlier in the episode, that's what happens when you play at Kansas. So, as much as we go, Iowa State's a tougher team, TCU maybe a little bit less challenging of a road atmosphere, of a road environment, you're still going to go play a team on the road that, like I said, maybe should have beat Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse last week. So, no slouch opponent, no easy game for sure. And I think the thing that scares me, Bobby, about this team the most is that this is another really, really good team at forcing turnovers, just like Iowa State. Guards Jameer Nelson and Avery Anderson ranked 3rd and 15th in the country in steal rate per Ken Palm. Obviously, you can't have another 16 turnover game or it's going to be real hard to win. So interesting that after that Iowa State game, Houston gets another big test in that regard, just immediately in their next game.
Man, it's pretty crazy life in the Big 12, especially for a team like TCU, right? You look at the schedule and it says number 2 Kansas lost by 2 versus number 9 Oklahoma versus number 2 Houston. Somehow they're playing 2 number 2s in a week period. It's insane when you really look at it. It's going to be interesting to see what they do versus Oklahoma tonight. Like you said, game tips off in 10 minutes. I'm going to go get myself some dinner and then plop down and probably catch the second half of that game. This team just kind of going through it seems very hot or cold, right? Against the better teams, they do pretty good, but they lost by 8 at home versus Clemson. Top 25 Clemson, so not a knock there. But then you play Kansas on the road and you hold them to 2. So it's really going to be, what TCU team do you get? Do you get that TCU team that didn't look great against Clemson, looked okay? Or are you going to get that team that looked incredible against Kansas and then we'll see how they look versus Oklahoma. Like you said, most of their opponents triple digits, really going to need big performances in the Big 12 to make the tournament. But yeah, a team that's kind of fun to watch. I know you and I were considering going, but unfortunately tickets, because we are a good basketball team, get very expensive suddenly. So it's a blessing and a curse to be this good, but overall going to be a fun game to watch. These are why we wanted to join the Big 12, so we could play teams that are in our conference, have some fun with it, guys that people who may have gone to TCU, especially here in Dallas Fort Worth, like I do. I know plenty of people who went to TCU. It just makes it more fun. I know a lot of people who support TCU. It's just fun. It's just a fun game. It'll be a fun game to watch. The atmosphere is going to be great.
Yeah, if you're someone who's just like, oh, this is one of our better road opponents, TCU, the last several years of AAC play, their resume would have represented almost certainly the best road game we played all season. That's just the level of jump that the Cougs are making competition here. I wanted to mention really quick before I got to the current year's team, like my two favorite TCU factoids. You kind of mentioned one of them, Dustin, the first back-to-back appearances since X. Do you know who the point guard of those two like 1980s TCU teams was? Current TCU head coach Jamie Dixon. Like he was the last guy to go back to back and did it as a player. Before that is now doing as a coach, which is kind of cool. I don't believe in my second one is I don't believe they've ever gone to 3 straight tournaments, which I think they'll have some work in Big 12 play to actually like make that happen, because they did not layer on the tough opponents in non-conference play, and they were the only Big 12 team to do that. And I'm not saying U of H layered on lots of tough opponents, but like U of H's schedule looks like a murderer's row compared to like what TCU did. And yeah, TCU got Clemson, which I think is a good opponent, and Nevada Reno at the Diamond Head Christmas week thing in Hawaii, who looks like one of the best mid majors in the country. But like, just they played 3 quad 1 opponents, 3 losses. Granted, one of them is, like you said, an extremely controversial finish at Allen Fieldhouse, though. Like, I think I probably repeat myself by saying extremely controversial finish at Allen Fieldhouse. There, you gotta give some built-in ref advantage there to Kansas. But I think it's a team playing. Yeah, right. I think it's a team playing better basketball here in the last few weeks. Fairly different, but also in some ways similar to the Iowa State team that we just got done playing. Like Iowa State, they aren't a team that relies on scoring a lot from 3-point range necessarily. They're good at grabbing offensive boards, and they're really good at forcing turnovers, which you mentioned, Dustin. I think you're really going to see Jamal Shed, the Cougar guard's ability to not turn the ball over, get tested for a second straight game, because TCU doesn't just want to force turnovers, but they want to play the game at a much higher tempo than the Cougars do. I think this is probably the fastest team you're going to see in terms of tempo in the Big 12. It's an interesting styles clash. TCU also has a ton of size. I counted 7 starters or rotation guys listed at 6'7" or taller. I will say 2 of those guys, Chuck O'Bannon and Jacoby Coles, have been limited or out due to injuries the past couple weeks. So I think it'll be telling how much those guys play tonight against Oklahoma here in a little bit. Trio of veteran guards who've been really disruptive: Emmanuel Miller, Jameer Nelson Jr., and Avery Anderson. I think you kind of mentioned that, Dustin. Even though they don't shoot the 3-pointer much, they did bring in a guy from the portal, super senior Travion Tennyson, who was a star player on that A&M Corpus team that went to the tournament last year, is hitting nearly half of his 3-pointers off the bench. So helps there. He doesn't contribute much offensively, but Ernest Uda is definitely an interesting guy, certainly defensively and rebounding wise. He did really well against Kansas last weekend. I think this game really is going to be a test of how elite this Cougar team is defensively, maybe more so than Iowa State, who is a very, very good team, but maybe is more content to play a slightly slower, more low possession, low scoring game than I think TCU is willing to. I mean, would love a big bounce back game from LJ Cryer here. You're going to kind of need that. And obviously Jamal Shed got to do a much better job taking care of the ball in this one. And Emmanuel Sharp is going to give you some positive stuff. But again, to repeat my point earlier, you can't count on Emmanuel Sharp shooting 50% every time on the road to stay in the game. Don't mistake that for me. It's nice to be an easy win, but I do think in some ways TCU matches up better than Iowa State. I do think as good as I'm sure of an atmosphere they'll have in Fort Worth, it's not Hilton Coliseum. So curious if that bridges the gap enough for the Cougars to win this one. But yeah, I will reiterate what I said before the Iowa State game. I will be happy with any win in Fort Worth. I think Iowa State's a better team than TCU, but I mean, other than what, maybe we go to UCF this year, right? I'm not sure. I'm I'm gonna
Go ahead,
keep
keep
I'm gonna
going. I
keep
got
talking
you,
here.
buddy. I got you.
Other
buddy.
than UCF on the road, if that's a game that is happening, which I believe it is, but I'm not 100% sure. There's not gonna be many Big 12 road games where I'm just like, we really need to break out the style points in this one. Like, just beat TCU in Fort Worth. Just do some of the things you didn't do so against Iowa State better. And I think we'll all be pretty happy about the result. Not that beating the Frogs in Fort Worth is going to be an easy task necessarily.
Just to answer your question, we do go on the road to UCF
Look at that.
before
Whew.
Kansas.
Whew.
What a pro, guys. What
Just
a pro.
definitely knew
This
that.
guy
Definitely
here.
wasn't flying blind. I think that's all the thoughts I got on TCU, guys.
That's all I got.
Yeah, same here. So yeah, definitely. We've talked a lot in this episode. If I were a more prepared podcaster, I would have looked up the stat. But I mean, we have rarely seen this Cougar team lose back-to-back games under Kelvin Sampson. So, obviously, you'd love this to be a game where you dominate the turnover and or rebound margin so much that you don't have to just outshoot them. But this is a team that's really good in both of those areas. So even if you play well, you're still going to have to make some shots to win this game for sure. And then moving along to the women's basketball team, which was less fortunate in Big 12 play this past week with a couple of very much expected blowout losses on the road against some highly ranked opponents in Kansas State and Baylor. We'll start with that game against the Wildcats. The Cougars actually came out really impressively in this one. They played in just a really elite Kansas State team, even in the first quarter, 13-13, and only went into halftime down 5. But the second half was woeful. The Cougars were outscored 22-9 and 21-5 over the final 2 quarters of this one. Houston shot 5 of 26 from the floor in the second half, including 0 for 9 from beyond the arc. Layla Blair led Houston with 17 points in this one, but it took her 18 shots and 7 turnovers to get there. Houston's second leading scorer was Bria Patterson with 6 on 3 of 11 shooting was your second leading scorer. No one else had more than 4 points. 3 of 11, not great for Bria Patterson, but with 3 shots and only 1 turnover, she was the only Cougar who made more shots than they had field goal or than they had turnovers in this game, which is not great. That's not great. At halftime I was really excited. I was genuinely excited. I thought I was going to have to come on here and eat crow because I would have been thrilled to say that I was an idiot for underestimating this team, and because even playing Kansas State within like 7 or 8 over the course of the game would have been a tremendous accomplishment that I would have been more than happy to come on here and go, hey, that's impressive. I know you can't take moral victories and put them in the standings, but if you play 2 halves against Kansas State like you played the first half and lose by several or 10, I think we would have all come on here and go, wow, that was an impressive effort. That's going to portend well for the future. If you play like that the rest of the year, you're going to surprise some teams. You're going to win some games. But you lose by 34, and that's basically just what we expected, only with some bonus false hope thrown in there.
Man, when I was looking at the box score of this game, it's so bad, guys. We shot 28% from the field in the entire game. K-State shot, I want to say just under, 49%, just over 49%, 49.1. Guys, our identity is a defensive team. Like we win by playing defense and turning teams over and getting easy buckets. 49% from the field. Guys, you may have looked it up, but can you tell me our shooting percentage from the field in the fourth quarter of this game?
You're like 8% or something, right?
8%.
I know we made 1 shot. Yeah. 1
of 12 for 8%. Now, I didn't play intramural basketball because I'm bad at basketball, right? And so I'm saying that with the full acknowledgement that I am so bad at basketball. I'm so bad at it. I think if you gave me 12 shots, I think I could I could at least put 1 in the bucket.
Are you being guarded by a K-State women's basketball player?
Right, I know that
no
is
chance.
Important. That is an important distinction.
Look, I think I
don't end up being one of those guys on videos.
No,
like,
I'm not.
I could put up a shot against this post player, and she just
I could get a shot up. It may
viral.
not go in.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't have blocked me the next week. No.
But also, I'm 34 and not a Division I athlete. Okay, 8%. 8% is an absolutely insane number. I've never seen a team shoot 8% from the field in a basketball game, men's, women's. Maybe my junior high basketball team that I played on, we shot 8%, but 8% is so bad, guys. And again, going into the season, what did we say? If you can at least get to a decent shooting clip, we trust the defense. Do we even trust the defense anymore with 49%, giving up 49% shooting? That's tough, man. That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, the margins were ugly in this one. The margin was ugly in the game we're going to talk about here in a second against Baylor. I will say, not really that much different than I would have expected. Probably you guys feel similarly, though. You can't feel good about just shooting as badly as the Cougars did, getting outscored 43-14 in the final two quarters of the game, only making 5 total field goals in your final 2 quarters of basketball. I mean, it's not great. And once the shots stopped falling for Layla Blair, you saw the Cougars really not have anyone else capable of consistently making buckets in this game. And I thought the Cougars did a good job of one of K-State's lead guards, Gabby Gregory. I mean, Aoka Lee, K-State's all-world post player, had 27 points, 11 boards, which isn't too surprising. Would have loved the Cougars to do a bit more there. So, I mean, this was competitive for one more half than I expected, which, well, that's good. But, like, you can only get so positive about that when the second half was so wildly uncompetitive as to kind of render the hope of the first 2 quarters you played. I mean, you're kind of canceling that out, which, again, this wasn't a game I really expected the Cougars, even when I was optimistic about this team was going to be earlier this season. I wouldn't have looked at the K-State game and be like, yeah, I think we could take that one in Manhattan. No, I mean, it's just, even in my most optimistic expectations of what this team was, this wasn't a game I thought they'd be competitive, but I probably hoped more competitive than the 34-point final margin, even if I didn't expect even one half this game to be competitive.
Yeah, it just goes back to what I kind of said about the men's team, right? It's not that you lost, it's how you lost. Was I excited that we were only down 5 at the first half? And like Dustin said, I was ready to eat crow. In fact, I had the game on in my headphones while I was practicing I was out at the range hitting golf balls, and I was like, guys, I'm gonna have to eat some crow about this. Like, how am I gonna do this, while it's playing in my ear? And then I get home, I start the game from kind of where I had left off, and you're just going, just make a bucket. Just give me a bucket here. And I really wanted to come in here and just be so wrong. Nothing would make me happier than being wrong about what I was thinking heading into this game.
Yeah, and then the road didn't get any easier for the Cougars, whose next game was an 87-58 loss in Waco to the Baylor Bears. The good news for Houston is they had a much more competent offensive performance in this one. They committed just 14 turnovers. They never had a half or even a quarter, I would say, where the offense just completely shut down. Unfortunately, this time it was the defensive side of the court where Houston looked even significantly more overmatched than they did against Kansas State. The Bears went 11 of 17 from the field in the first quarter. Bob, you want to talk about single quarter shooting performances I don't know that I've hardly ever seen? Baylor was 11 of 13 in the third quarter. Yeah, Bears shot a season high 57.1% from the field in this one. And Houston, for its kind of relative offensive success, Layla Blair was still the only Cougar in double figures in this one. So really with both of Houston's games from this past week, like no, losing to Baylor and losing to Kansas State on the road is not a bad thing. Those are good teams. They're going to beat almost any team in the country that's going to come into their building most of the time. But losing by 34-29 is just kind of entirely too unsurprising for this program. And I just, am I going to like harp on the way that the state of this program because of this week specifically? No, but I certainly didn't see anything that changed my overall kind of negative outlook of this program.
Hell, keep it within 15. I don't think I'm asking too much. Like, cool, you lost by 19 to Baylor. You kept it within 20. Awesome. But like, at least look
29.
competitive.
It's 29. It was not 19.
Oh yeah, I can't math correctly. Yeah, my bad.
I appreciate you trying to give us those extra 10 points, but it was
yeah, my bad. And I'm looking at it here too, and I just did the math wrong. Pat myself on the back.
Didn't do some carryings of ones.
Yeah. So it's just look competitive. Just look like you're in the game for at least a little bit. And we did against K-State, and that was exciting. But then you still lost by a ton to them, and you're losing by 29 to Baylor. It just shows you're not there, and you're not even close. There's no. It was like what Dr. Couture said about the football program. Like, I want to see some future. And do you see anything with this program right now? You're
No,
just kind
it's a
of,
super veteran roster. It's not
yeah.
like, okay,
You're just
well,
like,
in a
what
couple
are
of
we
years they
doing?
might be Big 12 ready. It's just like they put together a roster just because this coach is trying to save it, which understandably trying to save his job. At the same time, as someone who comes on here and tries to, as objectively as possible, analyze the program, like, love Layla Blair. I think she only has like one more year of eligibility after this one, and nearly the entire roster, it's a similar story, if not this year is the end of their college career. Is a veteran roster, is a roster that I'm not saying compete in terms of competing in the top half of the Big 12, but I think is most set up to be competitive now and just has not looked terribly competitive now. And not really, like, kind of like Dustin said, not really because of this game specifically, because everything surround or this week's games, because of everything surrounding this week's games.
Correct.
Yeah, it's just this week doesn't condemn Houston, but it doesn't redeem them either, and they've condemned themselves plenty with the rest of their performances. Going forward, I mean, Houston is actually, as we are recording this, in the early moments of their game at home against BYU, which we did preview on the last episodes. We won't go too much into that. They're up 6-3 right now in the first quarter, so good start. This is one of their actual winnable games. BYU, one of the lesser teams in the Big 12. So if you're going to win a game, this is one of your chances. So hopefully Houston is able to make good on that one. And then going forward on Saturday afternoon, they will be back at home hosting TCU. The Horned Frogs crashed through stop me if we're repeating ourselves, but TCU basketball played a super unimpressive non-conference schedule. Even less impressive on the women's side, maybe, than the men's side. They crashed through that non-conference schedule undefeated and won their Big 12 opener against BYU to improve to 14-0 on the season, but have followed that up with first, pretty understandable, but still kind of surprisingly large 21-point road loss to Baylor, followed by a very much not so understandable 8-point home loss to an Oklahoma State team that is not one of the conference's stronger teams. So the Horned Frogs are in Austin facing a top 10 Longhorns team as we speak. So this will likely be a team on a 3-game losing streak after a 14-game winning streak when Houston faces them this weekend. And man, that OSU loss hurt them in the net also. This was kind of a top 25-ish team, now down to 36 with no thanks to that loss to the Cow. Are they the Cowgirls in women's basketball? The Cowgirls, I
Yes,
guess.
they're the Cowgirls. Yep.
Yes.
And this is a TCU team that last week I described them as a team that Houston unequivocally wasn't going to beat this year, and I put this one, I think, multiple times in the loss column preemptively. If any of the games that if any of those games Houston's going to make me look foolish, like, I guess this could be the one, because like I said, for the last 2 games against Baylor and Oklahoma State, TCU has looked basically like I'd expect Houston to look in playing those teams. They haven't won a true road game this year. They didn't play any in non-conference. Their first road game was the Baylor loss, and then their second is tonight in Austin. So, this is a team that I don't know that can really push Houston around on the boards, doesn't force a ton of turnovers. So, would I bet on Houston in this one? No, but I don't know. I guess if we're trying to not completely punt on the season and be like a little bit optimistic, I don't know. This is a game that I'm just in the back of my mind. I would love. This is another game where I would love for Houston to make me look silly by at least playing, ideally playing close, maybe even winning a game that I'd already penciled as an L.
Yeah, similar thoughts. And for me, the big reason why is that TCU's awesome post player, Sedona Prince, is out for, I think, the first. I don't think it's a season-ending thing, but it is at least a medium-term injury. She was very, very, very important to their non-conference success. Was averaging over 20. Was averaging a 20 and 10 or 20 plus 10 double-double, which I don't care what conference competition or non-conference competition you're going against. Like, that's a really, really, really impressive number, and she will not be out there when the Horned Frogs come to Houston, which I think helps. But they also have Agnes Emma-Nopu, who I think has been an effective front court player, though not nearly the offensive player that Sedona Prince is. I think the really challenging thing the Cougars are going to have to contend with is Madison Connor, who comes in as a transfer from Arizona. TCU has a first-year head coach, Mark Campbell, who's a long-time West Coast women's college basketball coach, was on the Oregon staff for a long time, had a couple good years turning around Sac State before TCU gave him this job. At least with this TCU women's team, they at least have some justification for having kind of a soft non-conference schedule, a very new roster, first year of a head coach. Like, you want to kind of start the season in a positive way, whereas TCU, the men's side, I think could have benefited from maybe challenging that team a bit more, but sport's already been discussed, done and dusted on that one. But I think really what the Cougars can do against Madison Connor, who's as good of a 3-point shooter as we've seen all season, can be very important. And like you, Dustin, I think not a must win, which I think is what we kind of labeled the BYU game as a starting right now, kind of as
13-6 Cougs, 13-6 Cougs.
13-6 Cougs.
Let's go.
That one kind of felt a must win. This is not in the must win category, but this is it would be interesting to see if they compete in this one, because I think it was pretty harsh on the Cougars for the Texas Tech loss, which is, I think, a loss that's not looking as bad. I think the Red Raiders are a little bit better than I might have given them credit for. So, I mean, Cougars win this one against BYU convincingly and go out there and beat TCU. I'm not going to change everything I've said about this program, but I don't know. You're able to take that one against TCU that maybe you weren't expecting. You're starting to feel maybe a little bit better. Morale in the program's improving if you win a couple conference games in a row. And then, again, I think to say what you guys have said, we would all three love to eat crow and love to see this team finish better than we expect in conference play. I think it's just, you got to show us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you covered the TCU team pretty well. Madison Connor, 20 against Oklahoma State, 11 versus Baylor. She can put the ball in the hoop. And, if you're putting up 11 against Baylor, you're putting 20 up against OK State. What are you going to do to us? It's going to be, how can they handle the pressure? It seems like you said, Sam, they have a newer roster, but they do, Madison Connor, their best player, is a junior. She can probably handle the pressure that they're going to present to her from the Cougars. So same thoughts that you guys have. This team is one that maybe can be beatable, more so, especially with their best player out. So be nice to see it a win here. A big blowout loss versus TCU would be one of those things where you kind of just shake your head again and go, what are we doing here?
All right. So before we go, we do it and talk about the latest Cougar football transfer portal additions. Since our last episode, you guys can tell me if I've missed anyone, but I've seen 4. Mekhi Muse, wide receiver from Georgia. Malik Carr, a tight end from Michigan State. Tegan Wilk, defensive back from East Carolina. Cedric Melton, offensive lineman from Ole Miss. Did I miss anybody on my list, guys?
I don't think so.
I think Jaden York from Texas Tech, but not to say he was a backup tight end at Texas Tech. He will probably be a backup tight end here.
All right. Well, there you go. Those guys, I think those 4 at least that likely to see at least some of the field. Bobby, I want to throw it to you. Who do you like? Where do you want to start with these guys?
I just think it's weird we're bringing in so many tight ends. Like, we had 2 in the recruiting class we that signed on the national on signing day, and then we have 2 here. I think that's just kind of interesting, and I'm excited to see what the offense looks like. That's kind of my first takeaway. And then getting anybody from Georgia, if Kirby Smart says you're good enough to play at Georgia, sign me up if you want to come play here too. Even if you couldn't start for Georgia or play at Georgia and you wanted to transfer out, yeah, I'll take you. I will take you all day, every day. And then, again, if you listen to the premium episode about our signing class, any offensive line bodies we can get in here, I'm A-okay with taking. I don't care what you look like. I don't care how you play. At this point, throw it at the wall, see what sticks. In my opinion, just get as many bodies as you can in here and play the best 6, which Fritz already said he was going to do. So.
Yeah, I have a number of guys that want to talk about, but I'll probably lead with Zion Chris, who I think could be your long-term answer at quarterback. Dustin, you look like you're about to say something.
No, that wasn't one of the 4 guys I said, and I can't believe no one said anything. I completely whiffed on.
My God, I just assumed you said it.
The quarterback. Yeah, no, that's an important one.
No biggie. Yeah, started 6 games this past season for UL Lafayette. Passed for 1,222 yards, rushed for just under 500. Had 2 different 100+ yard rushing games for the Ragin' Cajuns. This past season, the Cajuns were 3-3 in games he started. He also came off the bench and led them to a non-conference win over UAB early in the season, where he rushed for 2 touchdowns and accounted for just under 300 total yards. I think the numbers would look even better, at least the season ones, if he didn't go down with a season-ending foot injury the first Saturday of November against Arkansas State. And he was definitely the quarterback that the ULL fan base, I think, was most excited about. I went on one of their fan podcasts before the Independence Bowl, and even though they didn't expect him to start or play the most reps, I remember the guys that had me on said they were specifically excited to get a look at Chris because he was allowed that fifth game because it was a bowl. I think their nickname for him was Baby Z, but I could be remembering that wrong. I did not go back and listen to my audio from about 14 months ago. He actually ended up playing something against U of H in that game, had a 25-yard run against the Cougar defense, did at times look like a true freshman backup quarterback playing against a team that had a pretty good veteran defensive front like we did. Just ended up getting pulled because their offense really just couldn't do anything. The Cougars were able to get just enough time to win that ugly and extremely cold football game. I'm really excited about him. He was already a dynamic quarterback in his first extended run as Division I starter. I think put him in an offensive system where he can use his feet, put some muscle on his frame, and I think you could have your answer long term at quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting long term and also really interesting in this year already. Are you seeing him as someone who's going to kind of be the secondary option behind Donovan Smith and then take over after Smith's last year? Is it going to be a quarterback competition? Are you expecting Chris to be the starter and just kind of begin your future with him at quarterback now? Real intrigued to see what the staff does there at the quarterback position. I think that's been kind of one of those lingering questions all offseason is like, is Donovan Smith a guy going into to the 2024 season? This doesn't necessarily answer that because maybe Donovan Smith is, maybe Zion Chris is, maybe it's a combination of the two, but I think certainly gives you a little bit more clarity in terms of what your quarterback room is going to look like heading into next year. And yeah, you mentioned Melton on the offensive line. Again, you take any offensive line body, you especially take an offensive line body that got recruited by and was playing at an SEC program. Most of his action this last season was on special teams, so not a lot of action there. I mean, he's an underclassman offensive lineman in the SEC. You can be an underclassman offensive lineman in the SEC playing special teams and still end up by your, kind of up last couple of seasons, be a pretty good offensive lineman. So given Houston's depth issues on the line, certainly happy to see him come in. Real intrigued by Carr. You mentioned bringing in a couple tight ends in the high school recruiting class, but I still don't know that you had a tight end that really looked like a kind of Big 12 starter, either on the roster or, from the high school kids that you brought in necessarily. Carr very much looks like that. Was second on Michigan State's entire team with 30 catches last year, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Muse, Mekhi Muse, again, I don't love like comparing players to other players because everyone's their own player, yada, yada. But getting Mekhi Muse in makes me feel a lot better about losing Matthew Golden because he's someone who similarly real talented young guy, obviously was playing with a better team and therefore is getting fewer reps last year than Matthew Golden was playing for the Georgia Bulldogs, but someone who looks like a potential star in the return game as well, the way that Matthew Golden was as well. So again, there's never such thing as a perfect like for like transfer. But yeah, overall, in terms of this Cougar offense, getting Chris in there, getting Melton on the line, getting Carr as your presumable starting tight end, and then getting Muse, someone who I think could really going forward be real difference maker at this level, a wide receiver and or special teams. It's exciting. It was an exciting week and feeling better about the Cougars offensive prospects heading into next year than I was a week ago.
Yeah, Muse actually, I picked this up from reading an article from a Georgia outlet about his transfer. Walked on to that program. Walked on originally, and by his third year was their primary return guy and was actually getting like snaps at receiver for them. Like that's crazy. Like I know a walk on at Georgia is probably of a higher caliber than your median Division I FBS walk on, but like that he was able to do that, it just tells you the kind of competitor he is. I read an article. It was Smart talking about Georgia's return game and just this guy who's this extremely highly regarded multi-time national championship coach just talking about what an incredible competitor Muse is and how much he liked him. And I think it's really cool. He gets to win a couple national titles walking on to his home state team, and then gets to now finish up his career potentially at U of H, get a couple seasons where he can actually now be a larger part of the offense. In addition to, I think, not perfect like for like comparison, but giving you a dynamic return guy. Now that you've lost one in Golden, to the portal. Yeah, I definitely feel better about that call. I just want to say a couple other things about Malik Carr. I think considering the position he plays and the fact that Michigan State's offense was a very not good passing attack, I think that makes his numbers look even better. Caught a game-winning touchdown late in the fourth quarter against Indiana for one of Michigan State's 2 Big Ten wins. This year was originally a 4-star recruit. Wouldn't be at all surprised if this guy is starting next year. I think I'm as confident as all the transfers we talked about that Malik Carr will be number 1 in the depth chart come the start of the season, come the first time that Willie Fritz releases the depth chart.
As I say, not only would I not be surprised if Malik Carr is starting at tight end, I think I would be surprised if he's not starting at tight end heading into next year, given how good he looked even on a bad Michigan State offense, and given, like I said, I don't know that there's another Big 12 starting caliber tight end on the roster at present.
Yep.
All right, real quick before we go, I'm going to throw in a surprise last bullet point here that we didn't talk about, what I realized like midway through this episode that we needed to at least briefly mention. Cougar Baseball adding Woody Williams as the director of pitching strategy and development. Was really excited as a Cardinals fan growing up. I just randomly loved Woody Williams. Just because I don't know, I just liked him as a player. And then when I, got to U of H and realized that he was a Cougar as well, just made me like him even more. It's been very upsetting watching him doing a real good job, as I believe he was the pitching coach, wasn't he, up for
at UT? Yeah.
Up with the Longhorns and doing a good job up there. So to get him and as even as a kind of not the official pitching coach role, is just kind of a other role or whatever, not one of your official assistant coaches,
not an on-field assistant, but part of the program.
Yeah, but to get him in your program in any capacity whatsoever, I think is a fantastic add, and it's exciting. Anytime you have a real successful alum coming back, that's exciting. But when you have a successful alum who has, I think, already proven his bona fides in terms of being a developer of talent at the collegiate level, that's doubly exciting.
Yeah, was also a really successful JUCO coach at San Jack as well. Yeah, got let go at the Longhorns because like the expectations there are insane. They were literally number 1 in the Big 12 and top 10 in the country in ERA like last season. This wasn't yes, numbers can lie sometimes, but if you have a top 10 in the country like staff ERA and number 1 in your conference, like numbers don't lie that much. Like the guy is a good pitching coach, and I think it can only be a benefit to the program that he's a part of it. Really, really cool. I always like to remember early to mid 2000s NL Central baseball players.
Oh, we watched the NL Central. We're cool. We're so cool. We were in the same division together. Anyways, no, super excited. That's been a problem with this program for the last couple of years, is getting consistent pitching, and hopefully here we go. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, the entire post Frank Anderson era at U of H has been.
I didn't want to say it, but
some questionable pitching. But hopefully Woody Williams is the guy that helps us get that turned around.
Real quick, guys,
just hit the strike zone. Just pound the strike zone, please.
Right. 21-12. Cougar women's basketball is up.
Let's go.
After 1 quarter on BYU.
Let's go, guys. Let's make this one happen. Come on now.
Fingers crossed. Whatever good luck charm you need to do, go ahead and do that.
All right, well, there's our positive note to end this one on. Going to reiterate something Sam said at the top, which is just you should go to SHPodcast, or not SHPodcast.com. I guess you're going to go to SHPodcast.com/support if you want to indirectly get to our Patreon page. The direct link.
Take the scenic route.
You take the scenic route. It's more fun that way. The more direct route is patreon.com/SHPodcast. $5 a month gets you the bonus content. It gets you the good karma of supporting the work that we do here every week. It's just generally fun. We have fun. We need to get another one of our little patron hangouts scheduled, because that was a good time last time. Always trying to look to find new ways to make your $5 a month worth it. We would love for you to also support us in a totally free way by going to your podcast app of choice and leaving us a 5-star review. If you want to reach out and say hi, you can email us shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at shpodcast. Or you can follow us on Blue Sky. You have a 100% chance still ongoing that we will follow you back if you follow us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. Much less high percentage chance that we will ever get around to actually posting over there regularly, but damn it, we will follow you if you follow us over there. That much is certain. So that's it for us. If you made it all the way to the end, you are the best. And as always,
go Coogs.